Hello everyone and welcome to the Roma Vacations Tiny Tour Series. This is number 5. We are at the Campidoglio today. Mircea is our head tour guide. He is the all-around fun guy. He's going to show you everything you need to know about Rome on these tiny tours. So without further ado, Mircea, take it away.
Okay, so hello, my name is Mircea and I want to introduce you to the Campidoglio Square and the Capitoline Legends today. It's a tiny tour week, so let's start with, first of all, the origins of it. The Capitoline is one of the 7 hills of the ancient city of Rome, the 7 original ones. At this point, the seat of the mayor of Rome, as you can tell by the flags, and the seat of Rome's museum, the Capitoline Museum. Many of you guys have passed through Rome. If you had a few days in a rush, you might have just completely missed it because it's right on the other side of the giant white monument. It's a bit obscured by the tree. Many of you guys might know it as the Vittorio Emanuele monument, the one with the chariots right in the middle of town. Now, the story of the Capitoline Hill actually goes back to the Etruscans, when apparently this was used as a site of a burial ground for an Etruscan warrior. Centuries later, as the Romans, Latins at the beginning, settled here under the mythological king Romulus in the 700s before Christ, apparently they choose the area of the Capitoline as one of their sacred areas. It just makes sense also logistically. Their city is developing from the Palatine, which is the next hill over. So therefore, as many of the sacred sites even today, they're close to the city, but usually in a quiet area, as secluded as possible. So the Capitoline being the next closest hill, naturally kind of developed like that. Now, as the Romans are building their temples on top, they stumbled upon the head of an Etruscan warrior, and thus they called it the Mons Capitolinus, from the head hill. Eventually, they're going to have the Capitoline triad here, the 3 main gods. Jupiter, the Roman version of, Zeus from the Greeks. Juno, their goddess of fertility, motherhood, their version of Hera. And Minerva, their goddess of wisdom, their version of Athena. Now, the Romans quite often intertwined politics and religion in the same place. So as a result, you're going to end up with the Temple of Jupiter on occasion being used as the high tribunal of Rome and as the High Senate. Even though they mainly had a curia, a meeting place for regular meetings, the Temple of Jupiter would definitely be used as, let's say, very important VIP meetings. Also, the Temple of Juno, quite often used as a mint and as a national reserve. Next to it, right behind actually, where you have the mayor's office, today you would have had, back in the day, the Temple of Minerva, goddess of wisdom. Now, right next to it, they would have had the library and the archives. Again, something that the goddess of wisdom would be in charge of. As the centuries developed, so did the European countries and the countries of the world. They're going to start centralizing their government and call it then capitals, mainly after the Roman example of Capitolinus. Now, as the hill develops, it's going to turn out to be the seat of the Roman nobility, or at least the city council. Behind me, you have Palazzo Senatoriale and Palazzo Conservatoriale. These places throughout history have been as a local council that at times worked with the popes, which are the legal kings of Rome, through medieval and Renaissance periods, but also at times the scene of protests and rebellions against against the popes and the kingdom of Rome. Now, right behind, starting with the buildings, you have Santa Maria Nara Coeli. It's one of the basilicas of Rome. It's a very ancient church, and it is named as the church of the mayor of the city. Behind us, you have one of the 2 wings of the Capitoline Museum. Now, the story goes that in the 1500s, at the very beginning, so early 16th century, Italy, at this point being a confederacy of cities, gets invaded by the French. As a prelude to the invasion, King Charles V of France declared a visit to Rome, and the popes commissioned Michelangelo to rebuild the infrastructure of the Capitoline and give us the staircase. You probably noticed I was climbing a bit earlier. Now, while Michelangelo's project is early 16th century, the project is going to be finished all the way in the 1930s, so it's going to take a bit after the French invasion and Michelangelo's death. What we do know the great artist wanted, and most likely also designed, are the 2 Castor and Pollux statues behind. One of the 2 palaces already here existed for the College of Conservatories, and it just got doubled up. Imagine you're renewing the building behind me, the palace that ultimately ends up being the mayor's office. you're renewing the one that I just showed you, and on the side over here you have an empty area. So what Michelangelo decided was to basically create symmetry by doubling with a symmetrical palace. It's in a trapezoidal shape, which is something that was used even at St. Peter's. If you've been or gonna catch on one of our tiny tours about it, this trapezoid will make the building behind me look less wide and taller, and it gives the effect of height on the whole ensemble, which is something that Michelangelo was very, very well known for. It's known that the flight of stairs is designed by him, and also that in their day they thought that that is a statue of Constantine, as in Saint Constantine, the man that made Christianity legal. Now, later on, we have figured out is Marcus Aurelius, and this is actually a copy. The original is in one of the two museums. Now, one other thing that you might find if you come to the museums here, being the official museums of Rome, this is where you're going to find the Lupa Capitolina. This is where you're going to find the she-wolf. One of the many found, but the one that most people remember from photos in our history books. Another legend that comes from the Capitol Hill, because I told you why we have capital city, would be the story of why we have capital punishment, sadly still existing today. The reason for that is that the Capitoline Hill was part of the defenses of Rome in the very, very early kingdom. You're looking at the times of Romulus, right? It's kind of mythology. Now, at this point in history, the Latins find themselves with one big problem. They're mainly a community based around warriors on top of the hill controlling the Tiber Island, which means that not a lot of women end up marrying them. Romulus comes up with a brilliant plan, and that's known to history today as the Sabinian kidnapping. Basically, they call upon a tribe called the Sabinians, their neighbors. They call a party in the city of Rome, and in the middle of the party, the Romans kick out all the Sabinian men and kidnap all the Sabinian women. That's the short of it. Now, obviously, the Sabinian men are going to fight back, and within a few years, they're going to come back with their king Titius Tetius, and they're going to try to break the walls of the city. If you remember from your legends, Romulus is half god. He's the son of the god of war, Mars, so the Sabinians aren't winning this one. So what they decide to do is treachery. They bribe a Vestal Virgin, a priestess of the cult of the house and family, and a daughter of the nobility of Rome called Tarpeia. They bribe her with the promise of all the gold of the other Vestal Virgins after the city falls, and Tarpeia opens a path on the Capitoline Hill somewhere behind the museum, roughly in that area behind me. Now, as the Sabinians come through, they get to the top of the hill where they end up at the Temple of Juno, which should have been roughly behind this building behind me. So in a very, very small area. Remember, this is the Roman kingdom, so things happen basically hill to hill. So as they pass through the Temple of Juno, most gods would have had sacred animals, and for Juno, they're the geese. Apparently, there's a courtyard full of geese. So as the Sabinians pass through, they stumble on them, they start making a ruckus. Romulus's men from the next hill over behind the current mayor's office, the Palatine Hill, come out. Pitch battle ensues. The Sabinian women apparently stop it by throwing themselves between their fathers and their now husbands. Sabinians unite with Latins. Titius Tetius and Romulus basically shake hands. However, there's one big victim here. Tarpeia, as you guessed it, was thrown off the cliff, the Tarpeian cliff. The cliff she let the Sabinians through. So the site of all that commotion was also the site of her death, and that's why we call it capital punishment. Throughout the empire, VIPs and important Romans would be sadly executed from there. And on that somber note, I see the lights have turned on, so they're going towards the nightlight. I hope you guys all come to Rome, and the weather's picking up, it's getting better. Have a very, very good evening. I'll pass you to Angela.
Hi everyone. So yes, the weather is getting slightly better. Thank you again for joining us. And as always, we're going to be back in 2 weeks with another tiny tour. And if you have any requests or want to see a certain site, please don't hesitate to ask. And have a great night from the Roman Vacations family. Bye.
Many of you guys often turn out to these tours. You probably know my camera skills are pretty prodigious, so thank you for coming every weekend.
Oh, I have gloves on. I can't turn it off.